Got it. Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. It is Monday, April the 3rd. This is our general finance meeting. We have in the chambers, Councillor Thomas, Councillor Hill, myself. Chief Hill is in Ottawa along with Councillor Miller at the AFN. And we have regrets from Councillor Powis. So are you ladies good? Okay. So identification of media. Seeing none, let's move right along. Is there any additions to today's agenda? Okay, can I have someone adopt today's agenda? Moved by Sherry Lynn. Seconder? Melba? All in favor? The agenda is passed. So today we are just going to move right into the finance minutes of March the 6th. Okay.
I'll move on a minute.
All right, thanks, Carrie.
I'll second.
Second by Sherry Lynn. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, our first presentation is social services. They're here this morning to give us an update on the capital projects. And so Arliss, I see Kevin, I see your team is online. And so I will pass it along to you and do a short, brief presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I will let Kevin proceed with the meeting. He has the schematics of the designs of the capital that we're doing. But just as mentioned at our last report, and we have some support resolutions after the presentation that will follow. So Kevin can take it away. Like to say, our part of our team too is Lillian from housing and Seagard Shore from health on some of the projects that we're working on.
Who's presenting?
Kevin.
Kevin, we can't hear you.
Must be having technical difficulties.
Okay. Alrighty,
Can you hear us,
Kevin,
Kevin?
I'm not sure why we can't hear you. Maybe if you want to log off and log back in.
You chatting? Oh, there's our tech guy right there. So just as a background, we've been working with First Nations engineering. We were at Brian Moot, no, okay. We were on to have the support letter for the social services expansion, and so we were wanting to provide the schematics today of what that will entail. There will be some service, not disruption, but we had originally thought we would be able to continue on without too much interruption so that our staff would be able to continue on in the facility at the time. But as we started this plan in 2014, there's been further deterioration in some of the existing buildings. So that's going to be considered as well. in the upgrades for the social services expansion. So I had a brief conversation with Zach on last week about possibly some other alternate sites, but that's one of the things that we will be also looking at is alternate sites for possible service disruption. Is he ready? Are you there, Kevin?
We can barely hear you. You just need the volume up.
Can you hear us now? Can you hear us?
Getting
Little-
louder.
Just hang on. We got our IT guy here. He's helping us.
Oh,
out.
there we go. That's good.
That better? Okay. How's that? Okay.
Barely.
great. Thank you. Sorry about that. Guess what? Sorry. My apologies. Monday morning. Yeah, okay. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for inviting us to the meeting. Once again, apologize for our IT problems there. RS asked us to put together a quick presentation on the social services edition. I have to my left here Heather Smith. She's our architectural technologist. She's one of the staff members that we have on the project. So we're just going to give you a quick overview of the floor plans, the elevation, the site plan, and we'll look at the schedule and the cost estimate and then take any questions. So I'll turn it over to Heather, and she'll just show you a quick overview of the floor plans we're doing.
Okay, hello. So to start off, this is the site plan. Sure it is. So we're adding in some additional parking up to just behind the building up here. And then adding in new drainage across the back of the building to help with the water management here. And then onto the floor plans. So we are adding a small area into the basement that will just help with access through the elevator and additional staircase. Onto the first floor plan. The majority of the existing building is staying as is. We are adding on this section just up through the back. In here, there will be additional offices all across. Those 3 new staircases, new elevator that runs all the way up, and a stage that's being added onto the gym area. We also have a new universal washroom and new washrooms coming in. These washrooms will be consistent all the way up on every floor. Onto the second floor plan. It is very similar. We're adding in all of these new offices across here, as well as a boardroom on this floor. The third floor plan. We will be having, again, a lot of new offices around. As well, we are adding a small area onto the roof for mechanicals, just adding a little bit of height there. Then onto the roof, you're going to have a nice green area terrace. So there'll be space to have a walking trail as well as areas to sit around and discuss. We'll be having areas have planters in there as well. Onto the elevations. So we have a few elevations to show. This will be the main elevation side. Our materials will be siding. We will have some brick areas as well as some vertical siding as well. Lots of window spaces. You can see the existing building here, and then the new building coming up the side. There'll be some nice windows, large openings up here. And then this is over the existing building, what you would see from the roadside there. So that's that nice building in the background. And that is the floor plans and elevations.
Okay. So just keep going. No, go back to the site plan. Yes. Temporary park. Yeah, temporary parking. Okay, so what we were proposing with all that, all the congestion that you have on Sunrise Court with great building and the Team Lodge and social services, we're gonna be putting the construction in, on the west, the east, yeah, sorry, the east side right there. So we're worried about how much site access you're gonna have in terms of the parking and also the contractor's gonna have access to the site. So what we're proposing is potentially putting a new parking lot at the back of, at the end of Sunrise Court, somewhere around there. We haven't quite located an area yet. I know there's the gardens back there. And I also know you're doing some work back there, proposing some work. So we gotta talk to, I guess, housing and anybody else that's proposing to do anything back there. But what we were gonna propose is, identify a parking area so that the contractor could, if he wants to put his site trailer back there, if he wants, they could park back there and walk to the site and do their work while not, congesting that site. So that's still up in the air. We haven't really discussed that with artists. We mentioned it, but there's been no decision on that yet. That's one of the things that we gotta finalize with the committee. The other thing was, there was some land at the back, let me go to the site plan. I think this has been resolved. Artist said, the north end of the building is right on the boundary line of the Six Nation housing property with the seniors. And then that new drainage swale is gonna be onto their property. So we were proposing that to put a fence up at that last unit, a construction fence, and put that new swale in, and then we bring it back to original condition. And I think that has been resolved, so that's our plan going forward from today, I guess. And then lastly would be the estimate, the estimate and the schedule. So this is the last estimate that we got. We hired a cost consultant firm to we gave all the plans to them, and they gave us the Class A estimate. So we've been proceeding based on that. So we've got the total estimated cost at $7,343,000 or $3,000, and then you add into all the profit, overhead, and adjustments. You're taking the total contractor's price about $8 million, 8.3. And these other ones are budget items, contingency, escalation. So in essence, you're looking at about a $10 million project is approximately the cost. We do have some site things that you have over there. We're gonna throw some contingencies in there for site, such as replacement of the existing asphalt parking. It's not in the cost, it wasn't part of our scope, so we just threw in some numbers. Hopefully that we can get the good pricing and include for the removal of the existing asphalt. Some granular aid for parking lot, so asphalt parking for the main entranceway. So we're hoping to get that, but right now it's not part of the requirements unless we get additional funds. So if they do, if the price does come in at the right number that we have, then these, if the committee wants to proceed with those, then those would be additional costs. But right now, we're gonna price them and hopefully try to get them into the tender cost. And then the last is the schedule. With the approval of the tender and contract come in, there's a few things that we're still trying to work out. So we're finalizing the drawings. They're about 99%. But we're hoping to have a tender proceed mid-May and go to approximately early June. We might be to move that up if we can finalize our tender documents. Close the tender approximately June 15th. I think that's it. And then we got tender review, a week or two to review the bids and get a letter to council. And then we expect construction to start 2 weeks after that, so it'll be mid-July. And it'll probably go 18 months. So we're looking at January, potentially January 2025. That's just the rough schedule. The tender documents, like there's a number of things we have to finalize, such as that parking for the contractors. Local content is going to be an item that I have to sit down with Mike to come up with a format for that in terms of the contractors that'll be invited. There was some discussion with True Architect is Brian is our architect of record. He recommended we proceed with a pre-qualification bid. That was just, we haven't decided to do that yet, but if we did, that could be done right now. So there's a number of things that we're still trying to finalize before we get the tender out. which would be scheduled right now, early in May. Okay, I think that's pretty well it for just a quick report on the project.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Is there any questions? Okay, there's no questions at this time. Do I have somebody who's willing to move the motion, the update on the capital project that's happening at social services? Moved by Sherry Lynn. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Michelle.
Thanks, Carrie. So I just want to read the motion before we, for the community. So the recommendation one on the update on capital projects. Whereas Six Nations of the Grand River First Nations recognizes capital assets are required to strengthen its existing prevention services for housing and services to support families with children and youth. Whereas Six Nations of the Grand River recognizes that capital needs of current programs are presently undetermined, but almost certainly including program space, cultural services space, family reunification homes, placement homes, and transitional housing. Whereas Six Nations of the Grand River Social Services has been active in planning for capital funding claims pursuant to 2021 CHRT 41. Therefore, it be resolved that the Six Nations of the Grand River First Nation accept the update as information and support the continued development of prevention services for Six Nations children and families. So that's been moved by Sherry Lynn, second by Carrie. Any final questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Motion is carried. We are going to move along to number 6. And so Arliss, over to you. And if you can explain the complex.
Yes, this is the proposed, I'm sorry, I am not familiar with the name, but we've been working with our working group to develop the complex that will include supports for respite care and placements for the Jordan's Principle. So it's a combined project with Jordan's Principle and prevention services. We have schematics. I'm not sure whether we have them available though, but we might have to come back and present that. But right now it's just the looking for support. We need a resolution to support the project so we can submit that into Indigenous Services Canada to support the funding. There is work that we need to do, so administratively, but we want to get on record the capital project. So we have had some initial meetings with Indigenous Services Canada, and they're in support of the project. So just background work to get that project done. Not sure, is Kevin still on the line or did he leave?
He's here.
Whether he has the drawings or the schematics or just a footprint of that.
Yes, we're just looking for them. So, where is it? There it is there. So there's, is this the child and youth, the youth center?
I hear you. I hear you, Kevin.
Can you hear us?
There, I heard you now when you spoke up.
Yeah, so, this is the child and youth center that we did a concept for, through Jason Brower, our architect. This is it just basically, this is just a approximate, like a site plan. I don't know if we have the actual floor plan yet. I think it's been sent, but this is a site plan showing access from Fourth Line down by Seneca Road on that lot. We're proposing to have a child and youth center there at the end of the lot with transition housing to the right of the drive. and a possible wastewater system. We don't know if it's a peatland system or a septic bed, a raised bed yet. That lot hasn't been developed, nor has it been designed, so we're kind of working with what we have at the moment, and that's the placement of the building at the back. There is a floor plan that was done. You remember this one? This is what was done with Jason Brower, showing the center of the administration area coming through the middle there, and to the left with a number of units there for. Can't see that, sorry.
So these are different counseling rooms. These are kind of flexible spaces. You could come in here and have a meeting or individual workstations as well. Then off to the right, we had an open workspace. So these are just going to be desk stations, plug in, so you can bring a laptop in and work in there. Anybody can use the space with a couple of small offices around the outside that would stay. We had a second floor for this as well. So this are going to be units for families to stay in. So there was few of the, I believe it's 4 3-bedrooms and 4 2-bedrooms, I think. Yeah, there's a few around units around each side on that as well, and then a communal kitchen and lounge space in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's all we have for this thing. So at this point, that's all we've been asked to do is just develop the floor plan. I think that's been done. We sent it in for costing, and I think that's as far as we were told to go ahead with the project. It's kind of just sitting there waiting for direction. Or I think it was submitted for funding. I'm not sure if maybe Linda or Arlis can expand on it. But the floor plan is done. The site plan is draft, and the access into the site still has to be developed. So there's still a little bit of work that has to be done with this project.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
So it is quite a unique building that we've been working with our community partners to address the support that's needed for our children and families that are struggling in the community. And housing, not housing, but service delivery site for the George principal workers as well. So I'm not sure whether Jesse or Alana want to provide comments.
Yeah, I think I agree, Arlis. It's Jesse, just very unique in that we're going to be able to house a number of services under one roof for children and families, and to be essentially a joint collaboration between community partners to be able to provide those services.
Okay. Good. At this time then, hearing no other questions, I'm going to read the motion. So motion or recommendation 2 or 6A, whereas Six Nations of the Grand River First Nation recognizes a need for transitional and supportive housing and services for respite care, supporting families with children and youth with complex and medically fragile needs, prenatal and postnatal supports, transiency that puts children at risk of children protection involvement. Whereas the original design and concept of a complex for residential support proposed for lot 2310 was referenced as a safe house alternative care program, and I don't know how to pronounce that, in March 2026. Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council agrees that the Child and Youth Complex be recognized and referenced as Iaguadogo. We will all go through it together. Whereas planning has included Six Nations Social Services, Six Nations Health Services, Six Nations Housing, band representatives, and the Ogwadeni Dow to meet a service delivery model for both Jordan's principal and child welfare prevention. Therefore, be it resolved that Six Nations of the Grand River First Nation supports the submission to Indigenous Services Canada for Guado. Arliss, I may be saying this wrong. We will go through it together. Construction under the Jordan's Principal Capital Funding under the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal Order 2021 CHRT 41 for capital infrastructure. So do I have a mover in regards to 6A?
How is this going to be fitting in with our present group home? Because they do certainly experience medical needs, complex needs of children there also. So how is that fitting in? Because I see with the planning committee, I don't see them listed. So I'm just wondering how that's going to work.
They have been involved, they have been included in the conversations, and they're specifically 12 to 16-year-olds. This is a family dynamic concept as well, that we'll be able to bring full families in, and young moms post and prenatal care, and the younger subset of children, right, that the group home doesn't provide supports to. They're strictly domestic violence as well, so this will create opportunities for families other than the domestic violence piece.
Okay, that sounds great, Arliss. Yeah, because certainly they don't bring families in at the present group home. So that sounds great that you're extending that extra service that's really needed. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I do, Michelle.
Sherry Lynn?
You got her, Michelle? Yeah. Okay, just a couple. I'll move it, first of all. I'll move the motion. But also, I guess for the people to be able to access these rooms, these apartments, I guess, they have to be with your service, in service?
Not necessarily. They'll be attached to services somewhere along the line. It might not be the band rec program. It might be somebody that's coming through health services that post and prenatal care that just needs some stabilization so that they can deliver a healthy baby, or even returning from the hospital. So they might be identified at different points in time to be eligible. I think there's only four units that are going to be developed for the residential spaces there.
Okay, so I guess for clarification again, is I'm not in no service and I need some help. I don't know, having a baby and having a place to stay, but I have no, I don't want to use that one. Use a
You're
different one.
transient, right? You're transient, right?
Yeah.
You don't have a stable house. Yes, those are the families that we're looking for.
Okay, because
that
I
are
guess-
identified at various stages of their life, right? And that need immediate support. So it's kind of like, we can't use the words, what can I say, we're public, right? Safe house. So we want to do like, oh, we're all going through this together. So it will be whichever door, and that's kind of what we're working towards. There's no wrong door, and
Okay.
whichever entry door they come in, that if there's space, then we'll be able to provide services to them.
Okay, so if I don't have no connection with no agency, and all of a sudden I call your department, and then I can start getting that ball rolling
Yes.
and
Yeah.
be able to get housing.
Yeah, short-term transitional housing. That's
And how
where we
long
have,
is short term?
well, that's what we have to determine depending on the availability of other units in the community. So that's a
Okay.
backstop that we need councils to work on too, is, the longer term housing. Because right now we might be able to transition them to our band rep housing, which is up to 2 years. And maybe if there is domestic violence, working with Ganokwishra to move them into their stabilization program, but
Okay,
it's a short term. And we also want to do respite care too, because we know there are a lot of children out there with behavior and parents just needing a break. for support. So that's what the next stages is developing that service delivery model.
So all this information, even the one that we just passed, the motion before this about the new build and even this new build and even all the builds, I guess, that all that information will be out to the community
Yes, that's why we're going public today. We're getting ready to do that.
and more in the papers or in a brochure. I'm not sure what.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'll move.
Do I have a seconder? Second by Melba. Any questions? No, it's just update. Okay, so all in favor? Anybody oppose? Seeing and hearing no opposition, motion is carried. Waive second reading. Moved by Sherry Lynn. Seconder. Melba. Second by Melba. All in favor? Anybody oppose? Hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, so moving right along now to number 7. So recommendation 7 outlines the letter of intent for the submission of the CHRT capital funding. And so I'm going to read the motion, then open it up for discussion. So 7A, whereas 6 nations of the Grand River First Nation recognizes capital assets are required to strengthen its existing prevention, Jordan's Principle and the First Nation or band representative service programs, as well as its emerging post-majority support services program supporting families with children and youth. Whereas 6 Nations of the Grand River recognizes that capital needs of current programs are presently undetermined, but almost certainly include programming space, cultural services space, family reunification, placement homes, and transitional housing. Whereas 6 Nations of the Grand River has received some information from Indigenous Services Canada of a deadline of March 31st, 2023 to apply to capital funding claims pursuant to 2021 CHRT 41, and due to this limited time, 6 Nations of the Grand River will be unable to submit a full capital claim submission by that deadline, which has passed. Therefore, be it resolved that 6 Nations of the Grand River First Nation supports the letter of intent submission to Indigenous Services Canada for the post-majority support services capital funding under the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal Order 2021 CHRT 41, which will identify capital needs of current programs which are presently undetermined, and it will include programming space, cultural service space, family reunification, placement homes, and transitional housing, and set aside a portion of lot 2310 as a proposed space. Okay, so what happens now? Because we've missed the deadline, this is why we're doing the letter of intent, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right.
Questions? Sherry Lynn.
I guess for me is, how did we miss the deadline? You're on mute.
I'm on mute. Okay. We've been having ongoing discussions. They know the letter is coming. They asked that it have the resolution included with it. So there are ongoing negotiations. So it was the deadline to start the project. So we weren't shovel ready. So now we have to go through this longer process of a capital assessment and the letter of intent.
So Arliss, that should have been written in the letter of intent, right? Because it sounds like we missed the boat when you're saying we weren't shovel ready, so we couldn't apply.
Yeah, it's one of those things that have been kind of on the with the AI, with the agreement in principle and the final settlement agreement. We're still working through those, so, we would still be we would still be able to submit the letter on the 10th. So technically, we haven't really missed the boat.
Other questions?
No.
Do I have a mover?
I'll move.
Moved by Sherry Lynn. Second by Hazel. Any last questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Motion is carried. Waive second reading.
I'll move.
Moved by Sherry Lynn, second by Hazel. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, Arliss, thank you so much. You and your team for being here this morning. And so, community, that concludes our general finance open session. So, motion to adjourn.
Thanks, everybody.
Who said that? Moved by Hazel, second by Sherry Lynn. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
Yeah.